In April 2026, one company did something that no company in the entire history of capitalism had ever done before. Nvidia, a chipmaker most people had barely heard of 5 years earlier, crossed $5 trillion in value. Not 500 billion, 5 trillion, with a T. That is more than the entire economy of Japan, the fourth largest on Earth. And it was all built on a single product, the one chip that every artificial intelligence company on the planet is now desperate to buy. But here is the part almost nobody says out loud. Nvidia isn't just selling those chips anymore. It has started handing its own customers the money to buy them. And that one quiet decision may turn out to be the most dangerous bet in the entire history of the technology industry. To understand the trap, you first have to understand the man in the leather jacket. Jensen Huang founded Nvidia back in 1993, reportedly sketching the idea in a booth at a Denny's diner, just to build better chips for video games. For nearly 30 years, that is all it was. A graphics card company. Respected, profitable, but niche. Never the main character in anyone's story. Then the world made a strange discovery. The very same chips that render explosions in a video game are also the only chips fast enough to train an artificial mind. And almost overnight, Jensen Huang stopped being a hardware vendor and became the single most important supplier in the entire global economy. Think back to the gold rush of 1849. Most of the miners who rushed to California went broke. The people who got truly rich were the ones selling the shovels. In the AI gold rush, Nvidia sells the shovels, and it sells them to absolutely everyone. Every ChatGPT query, every AI-generated image, every self-driving prototype on the road quietly runs on Nvidia silicon. So when OpenAI, Google, Meta, and Elon Musk's xAI go to war over artificial intelligence, they don't fight Nvidia. They line up to fund it. Jensen had engineered the one seat at the table where every single move, by every single player, only makes him richer. The house in a casino that never closes. By early 2026, his personal fortune had blown past $180 billion, making him one of the richest people alive. But a fortune that big always attracts one very specific, very uncomfortable question. What happens when your customers run out of money to pay you? And this is where the story quietly turns from a triumph into something much stranger. In late 2025, Nvidia announced it would invest up to $100 billion into OpenAI, its own single biggest customer. Think about what that means. The company selling the chips would be lending the buyer the very money it needed to buy those chips. And then, tellingly, that headline deal stalled and quietly fell apart. What replaced it was almost as revealing. In early 2026, Nvidia put $30 billion straight into OpenAI, part of a mammoth $110 billion round, alongside Amazon and SoftBank. And that was just one piece. Across 2020s, Nvidia's equity bets on the AI industry topped $40 billion. And the majority of those companies are, very conveniently, also major buyers of its own hardware. Analysts have a name for this pattern. They call it circular financing. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Nvidia gives money to a customer. The customer hands that money straight back to buy chips. Nvidia books it as revenue. The revenue lifts the stock. The higher stock funds even more customers. Round and round it goes. Now add Oracle to the picture. Larry Ellison is championing Stargate, a plan to pour up to $500 billion into colossal data centers, built mainly for OpenAI. And guess who supplies the chips humming inside all of them? Nvidia, again. The same dollars keep circling a tiny handful of interconnected giants. Nvidia, OpenAI, Oracle, Microsoft, and AMD. all of them investing in each other, all of them buying from each other. By 2026, analysts had traced more than $800 billion locked inside this tangle of crisscrossing deals. And that is the real problem. When money loops between just a few companies, demand can look organic when it is partly manufactured. Revenue can look rock solid when it is really the same dollar, counted 5 times over. It is the economic equivalent of moving cash from your left pocket to your right, and then proudly calling yourself profitable. And if all of this feels eerily familiar, it should. Back in the late 1990s, a company called Lucent Technologies pulled almost the exact same trick to grow faster. It lent money to the young telecom startups buying its equipment. Sales exploded, the stock soared, and Wall Street cheered it on the entire way up. Then the startups couldn't pay. The loans went bad all at once, and Lucent, once worth more than any other American company, simply collapsed. Cisco, the Nvidia of the dot-com era, lost around 80% of its value when that bubble finally burst. This exact strategy, dressing up your sales by financing your own buyers, has a name and a body count. It is called vendor financing. And today, heavyweight analysts at Goldman Sachs, Wedbush, and Mizuho are openly asking whether Nvidia is running that same old playbook, just with far bigger numbers, because the foundations under this boom are shakier than they look. OpenAI, the crown jewel of the entire AI economy, is reportedly on track to lose around $14 billion in 2026 alone. That is nearly triple its losses from the year before, and it does not expect to turn a real profit for years to come. Meanwhile, the sheer amount of money being spent building data centers is swallowing an ever larger share of big tech's earnings. Hundreds of billions of dollars, all poured into a single assumption. The assumption that demand for AI will keep growing forever, and fast enough to justify every last dollar of it. But if that demand stalls, even for a single year, this loop doesn't just slow down, it goes into reverse. The customers you funded suddenly can't pay. The revenue you already booked evaporates, and a $5 trillion valuation discovers, in real time, exactly how much of it was ever real. So when he was challenged on all of this, Jensen Huang answered with a single word: ridiculous. He insists that Nvidia's investments are only a tiny fraction of the enormous capital these companies actually raise elsewhere. He argues the demand is real, the shortage of computing power is real, and that his critics simply cannot see what he sees. His exact words: "We see something very different," and he might genuinely be right. Maybe this really is the birth of a whole new industrial era, and Jensen is just funding the future faster and braver than anyone else dares to. That is the bull case, that what looks like recklessness from the outside is actually a moat, an advantage so deep that no rival can ever cross it. But here is the uncomfortable truth about bubbles. From the inside, they never, ever feel like bubbles. They feel like clarity. They feel like conviction. They feel exactly like a brilliant man in a leather jacket, telling you with total confidence that this time is genuinely different. The dot-com founders believed that, the housing lenders believed that, and every single one of them had a number that proved they were geniuses, right up until the moment it didn't. Jensen Huang has placed a bet that only a man sitting at the very center of everything could ever make, that he can fund the entire artificial intelligence economy into existence before anyone stops to notice that the money is quietly going in circles. If he turns out to be right, then $5 trillion will look like just the beginning of the story. But if he turns out to be wrong, he won't simply fall on his own. He will drag the whole interconnected empire down with him. The shovels, for now, are still selling as fast as he can make them. The only question left is whether there is any real gold buried in the ground. This is Artificial Empires, where we tell the stories behind the money, the power, and the machines that are quietly reshaping our world. If you want to understand the next empire before it ever makes the headlines, subscribe and follow along. We are only just getting started. Artificial Empires,